we're back. Realized that my console down here gets a bit covered up by the video, so I'm actually in the right right side one. I'm going to use and start here, so kind of ignore the output that you see slightly behind my ugly face. Okay, so next bit I want to cover is React routes. So let's go React router. It's a bit bigger. This is a kind of one of the main routing libraries, and by routing I mean, so let's say we're here and we want to go to /login, for example. What's going to be rendered when you go to /login? Because right now, no matter what you put in here, it's always going to render you at that home page. And the other thing to call out as well is obviously in a widget, we're not going to be using the URL path to navigate between different screens on the widget. But we can use this React Router library to do in-memory routing, right? So what we'll do for simplicity now is we're developing it. We'll use web routing library, which lets us put stuff into the URL bar, and for the standalone widget as well, it makes sense. But then what we can do is when we're in a widget configuration, we can use an in-memory router. So right now we use the browser router, it's called. Hash router you can use as well. But then when we eventually deploy it as a widget in something else, we'll use the memory router. Okay. Excuse me. So okay, so let's see what we want to do. Okay, yarn add React router DOM. Okay, so DOM, React router is obviously one of the base packages, and the DOM is the package that corresponds to the web. So if we wanted to do this, the in-memory one, it comes as part of the default package, but the web one, we need to, where's the quick start? We need to install the DOM version, okay? So we're gonna need both eventually, so we'll install both now. I believe we'll also want add types React router DOM. Okay, so in app, what we can do is now we want to put routes in here. So we want to say basically when the URL equals, just slash to render home, if it equals /login to render a login screen, so on and so forth. Let's just toggle Vim mode. Okay. So the way we go about that is I'm going to import router is browser router is React router DOM. We're going to grab a couple other bits from this as well, right? So we have browser router. We have something called a switch. Where you switch? Okay, here's a switch. And what the switch is going to let us do, and hopefully you can see that, is we're going to be able to specify a bunch of routes below the switch, and it'll just choose one of them that matches. Okay, so what you could do if you had a kind of a larger application is you would go, so let's start at the top, so router, put the router at the top, and anything now that's within this router is going to get rendered based on the route that it's given. So we can't just give it home like this. What we'd have to say is root, and let's say exact path / component. So what I want it to render is going to be home. I'll get rid of exact for now. Okay, so this root I'm now going to pull out as well. Import root, and we'll grab switch as well while we're here from React router. Okay. Now root. Why do you not? Oh, sorry, I can't spell. That's why. So now when the path is equal to this, it's going to render the component home. So let's jump back here. Wait while this compiles. What didn't you like? Looks like they're completely unrelated. Okay, here we go. So when I'm at slash, it's going to render home, right? What if I go to slash test? It's going to render it anyways, because everything's going to match right now. Is that right? Hold on. Okay, so let's try something different. Let's now create another path called test. And instead of actually giving it a component to render, I'm just going to give it a function right in here, right? So I'm going to say render with this function and return test. That way we'll know if it's actually set up and working properly, or if I've forgotten something. A router may only have one child. Oh yes, a router has to have one child, of course. So we put fragment. Fragment may not even work actually. Okay, let's try test. There we go. Now it's rendering test and it's rendering home. So where are we going? Why is it rendering both, right? It's rendering both because both of these technically match right now. So path slash will match slash plus anything else. Path test will match just test. So if I do TES, I'll remove the test from the bottom, and I'll just have this home. If I wanted only the home, when it's exact, I need to give this exact flag here. Okay, and now, well, this is going to render nothing because nothing matches it, okay? Whereas now it's home, and now it's test, okay? So hopefully that's kind of making sense. Should be fairly evident. The next thing I want to do is I'm going to have a catch-all route, okay? So let's say, for example, I have all these advanced. What happens when I do this, right? What do you render then? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a route called catch-all. So a route, I'm going to have component, and I'm going to say, call it unknown route. I need to make this, so import unknown route from, okay, components / unknown route, and then in components, make a new file, route.tsx. Right now, I'm just going to print out a H6 unknown route. We'll make this look a little bit nicer in a minute. And then lastly, export unknown route. Go up here and correct that spelling mistake. Okay, so app now, unknown route should get, what are you complaining? Closing tag, router, whatever, made a mistake. Oh, yes, I haven't closed that. Okay, so when neither of these match, it will then do unknown route, okay? So let's try test to see what happens. Okay, so now I'm getting both, test and unknown route, right? And I'll explain why. Likewise, if I go to home, I'm going to get both. And the reason for that is I'm not using a switch statement right now, where I'm saying, in here, render anything that matches. And so what you could do, right, is you could have maybe header up here. So let's say a custom header where we put some stuff at the top, and likewise a footer down here. And now we have anywhere on our site that we want a header. Everywhere on our site is going to have a header and a footer. And then in here we do switch, right? And so header automatically renders, footer automatically renders. Actually, let's just put it in as a div for now to header, and we'll do the same for footer. Nope, div footer. My switch must have messed that up somehow. Okay, so now I have a header, a footer. No matter where I go in here, the header and the footer are always going to render. Okay, and if I go to unknown route, there's my unknown route. And so that's how you kind of start topping and tailing and having consistency in what's going on. Obviously, we don't care about a header right now, don't care about a footer, and everything in here is in a switch, right? So anything that doesn't match is going to go to this unknown route. And the reason I'm kind of showing some of this stuff is to just give more examples of how to use React. So unknown route, let's go take a look at that. And let's kind of expand what we do with unknown route. So right now it's pretty straightforward. Why don't we be a bit more fun? And we're going to add in import unstable box is box from Add material UI core box. We're going to add in import. Let's go vector those. React. Let's have a browser that's sad. Let's make the browser sad. Where's the browser? Okay, so here's our browser. Okay. And now when we have an unknown route, the browser is going to be sad, right? Because it hasn't been able to find its route. Of course. Browser size equals, let's see, 200 looks about right. Mood, what's a mood? Is it sad? Sad, yeah, sad is it. Sad. And we'll take the default color for now. Okay, there's my sad browser. Now what I want to do, I'm just going to put it in the center because that's kind of where I'd rather have the content always rendering in the center. And so what you'd normally do is you'd do something like that out here, right? You'd kind of have whatever it is out at the top. So everything that gets rendered as a child component is automatically put in the center. Okay. So let's just finish unknown route and then we'll worry about that after. The next thing I want to be able to do is I want to get a little bit of information, right? So like if this, you could use this as like a catch-all, so you could have routes or errors or whatever, and you probably want to print something out and say, hey, you know, that route doesn't exist. So we'll just give it a little bit of a message. I don't know if this gives us the option of giving a message. I don't think it does. It's just a silly looking avatars. No, I can't even put words in the speech bubble. Okay. So let's add a little bit more here. Make this into a div. Let's use some typography from React Material typo typography. And what we're going to say is, oops, we couldn't find, and I'm going to put something in here, URL, okay, now I want to make this a template string, because I want to do that substitution on URL. So up here, I'm going to go const URL. Now I'm going to show you where I'm going to get the URL in a second. So I'm going to put props in here right now. And let's see what's actually injected into props. Back here. So here's props. You can see props has a couple things on it, right? History, location, match. And these are all things that have been injected as props by React Router. And so I can look, right? Match is going to show us what was used to match this component. And in this case, it was just a slash, right? We didn't even need to go further than that. But actually in location, we have a path name, okay? And that path name is actually what we want, is our kind of URL. Well, maybe I can do, why don't we just call it path name? Okay, and then from it, I'm going to grab it off props.match. Props.match. And get rid of that. And let's see what happens. Oops, we couldn't find undefined. That doesn't help. What have I done here? Props.match. Props. Oh, props.location.pathname. I did props.match. So it's because I haven't put in the typing yet to kind of the type script would have caught that. Okay. Oops, we couldn't find there. Okay, great. That's what we're kind of wanting. And we can come into this later and tidy it up and make it look however it is we want it to look. So let's just add in, how do I'm trying to remember where I get the types for React Router. For now, let's just go interface my props. We're going to have location, and location is going to have path name, and that's going to be a string. So we'll just explicitly state this one, react.functional component props. All right, anything else that's not on there, we'll have to add it later. And now this no longer is any. It will figure out the type from what's passed in here. So you don't actually have to explicitly declare it here. It already knows. And so you can see if I now go props dot, I'll see location. Children is something that just comes from a React functional component. We won't get into that now. And then I should be able to see that this is actually a string. And it'll figure it out here, right? So path name is a string. So then I can on path name do all the good stuff with TypeScript. Okay, that's kind of all I want to do now for this. I guess I'm not going to touch box here. Browser, typography. This is obviously doesn't like the order I've done things in, right? So that's kind of the way it's going to want it. To not complain. So unknown route. So you can start to see how all the routes will get more complicated, right? So let's have a login, for example. Maybe a register, login, etc. But for now, let's just call it a login route. And we're going to give it a component of login. Login. And import login from components / login. So you do login. Okay, components, new file, login.tsx. Import React. You can start to see it do this a lot, right? Really, I should just have a template for this. And then const login equals react.functional component. For now, it's going to do h1, h2, whatever, login, export. And there are template things to quickly populate what you're doing in here in VS Code. I just never seem to use them. Why don't you like this? Components. So that's my catch-all. This should now be home. And login should be login. Okay, so let's just tidy this up a little bit. What I'm going to do is I want to define the kind of centering of our content once. And the reason we just want to do it once is so we don't repeat ourselves, right? Dry. And then what we're going to do is we're going to move all the routes out of this file and put them in a file that's just going to take care of our routes for us, which will just kind of make everything seem and feel a little bit cleaner. Okay, so I don't need this frac one anymore because I've said it's just a bit repetitive. So let's say we're going to put everything in our app, no matter what it is, header, footer, all of that into one box. We're not going to have a header or footer, we're just going to have a box. Put a box here. Okay, I'm now going to import a box. Unstable box is box from UI box. Okay, so what do I want this box to do, right? Well, I really just want it to be in the MX auto. So put it in the middle of whatever it's being rendered within. Should be able to refresh now. Okay. Now, let's say I want to limit the width of this. So for now, let's just have this take up, how about 50% of whatever the available width is. Okay, good. And maybe we'll just give our box a border, just so we can see where it is. Okay, there's our box. Now, no matter where we go, it's going to now render inside of that box. Okay. And now let's go to home, and we'll just change it so it takes up all available space of its parent. Right. So I had a box out here. I can now get rid of this because now paper will just expand. Okay, good. And what I probably could do is just put the paper on the outside of everything else and have it padding in. So no matter where you go, right? So if I go to test, it would be on a piece of paper and padded in properly. And that way I only have to do it and define it once. So why don't we do that as well? Get rid of paper here and here. Just going to get rid of root because we no longer need it. Leave all that there. So box. Inside my box, I'm going to want my paper. And material. Okay, let's get rid of the. Great. Now what I want is I want a little bit of padding in here. Don't really want to put it in here actually. The reason I don't really want to put it in here is because you want for the kind of, I like to have kind of routes in that type of logic to set up the wiring all in a file all by itself. I want to put routes in its own separate file, and then if I'm starting to kind of put too much display logic into this file, it kind of gets a little bit, it's like crossing our wires. I'm just going to put it in here now to cheat. Okay, so padding, let's do 16 pixels, just for the time being. Okay. What we'll do is margin top. We're gonna have 16 pixels as well. Move it down. Okay, and this is all just superficial right now. It doesn't actually do or tell us anything. So we have home. We got login. Okay. We have error page when something isn't going to work, and in this case, it's going to tell us what it was that it couldn't find, which is great. Let's actually make that strong. Can I do strong here? I'll find out. Don't know if I can. No, I can't. Because it's string, right? It's not actually gonna. That's fine. I can also do things like color. I think error. All right, now it's gonna make it whatever the error palette color has been set in the theme, which is nice. Okay, I think that's. I guess I could do one more thing here. I could do class name, do css.root, make this centered. Actually, let's not even do that. We're going to use the box. This is why I like box, because it now using box, I don't have to wire up any of the CSS stuff. I can just say text align, center. And I'm going to import box. Unstable box is box, and all this will be gone as well very soon, so you can just get it right off core, which will be great. There we go. Okay, something went long, something went wrong. Test. Good, something went wrong with test. We are back to home, and that's kind of our example of obviously hooking up the React store, the remap store. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move all my routes into a standalone file, okay? So let's do that. New file, roots.tsx. I'm happy to keep roots at the root file as well, because I kind of see, you know, the app entry point, the index routes, all those is kind of like almost being like meta information about the app itself, rather than being specific components that display information. Okay, so routes. Now I'm just going to grab all this from in here. So things I want to display, browser router. That looks like everything I want. Import React from React. Const routes. Excuse me. Okay. So I don't need any logic in here because I just want this to be display, right? So let's get router, put it in here, and export at the end. Oh, and then in here, okay, I would now put routes, and I'm going to import routes. Import. Oh, I know why I'm getting my what things look like mixed up. I'll show you in a second here. Okay, so let's make sure routes work. /login. Great. And login. You can now use back. It'll work properly. It won't force the app to refresh. This is literally just the virtual DOM is changing what's going on here. It's not actually rerouting. Okay. Sorry, so I kind of I probably misspoke earlier. I like to put all of my kind of setup code in index, not in app. And then once I'm in app, then I can start doing displaying in application logic, right? So provider, theme provider, CSS baseline, I typically like to put all of this stuff into index.tsx. TSX. And then from here forward, now I'm going to do display. So typically in my app, I'd have like my header, my main content area with the routes embedded in that, and then my footer. And in here, I'm just going to blame getting up early. So, okay, so let's move all this into index. Okay, so get that down there. And our prettier will take care of all the formatting, which is why I like it. Go back to app, and down here, get rid of all that. Okay, get rid of the config. So config, theme, store, provider, CSS baseline. All of these are going to come with me to the other file. Get rid of that. I'm going to want paper because I said I'm going to keep that here. Now bring all this in. Let's see, organ. Okay, see if that now renders properly. Okay, great. So here's my home. Welcome to the widget. What's your name? React store. Go to login. Okay, login now works. Go to test. Or not test, sorry. Oops, we couldn't find that. And then back to the main page. Okay, so let me just make sure that everything kind of makes sense. So if I now go in here, git add, git commit, added skeleton for routing. Right, now it's pre-commit hook will fail. So it didn't fail because it fixed it for me. So whatever the errors were that it found in app, it actually went and fixed for me, which is great. So I just tidied it up, made it look a little bit cleaner. I've now committed that, or have I not added the additional files? That's probably what's happened. Yeah, git add. Not bad. I should have just amended that, but okay. So that looks good. Okay, I'm gonna stop this video now. I will push this kind of working boilerplate as I'm building it now to the repo, and that way you guys can start looking at it now as it starts to come together. All right, see you on the next video.